People that rent out their personal property as a service, Lyft or Uber, Airbnb, etc. What is your customer horror story? Story 1. Last week, a woman who was fully vetted by Airbnb rented my house for what turned out to be a Halloween party. She lied about her intentions, even when I spoke to her over the phone. In just a few hours, they did over $3,000 in damage, and the police evicted 150 people from my 1,200 square feet home. It was only broken up by police because there was a gun shooting that landed somebody in the hospital. All this in a quiet residential neighborhood that is part of a golf resort, in a city that is not especially known for crime. I'm sure the damage would have been far worse if the police hadn't come because of the gunshots. Thank God nobody was killed. Story 2. This is why a lot of Uber drivers I've seen get a small screen/separator thing behind the driver's headrest. It won't stop someone actually trying to harm you, but you'll at least have a few seconds while they reach around it. Story 3. Picked up a guy in Hollywood at 1 a.m. who wanted a lift to the valley. I became increasingly concerned as we drove up into the hills. He told me to turn into a completely dark nature reserve. He told me that his girlfriend was a land use manager for the park and he was going to stay with her overnight. We drove through the dark, winding roads of Fryman Canyon, and I honestly thought he was going to kill me. There was also a car following us. Turned out he was right. His girlfriend did live out there, and I wasn't harassed at all. The car following us was a park ranger wondering what the heck I was doing out there so late. Story 4. I understand that answer, but the real answer is, we are assholes who avoid taking responsibility for most things in our everyday lives, so why start now? Same parent, when confronted with their child's shitty behavior at school, will say, we never see that behavior at home. Sure you don't. Story 5. That shit is popping up all over my rental property. New walkthrough procedures have been learned, like doing the walkthrough when there is daylight as it exposes more, like dirty carpets and scuffs on walls. Gently wiggle tall bars/TP holders, curtain rods, press buttons on appliances to make sure they didn't prop them back in place after breaking them, etc. Story 6. Well, I, on the other hand, had to leave a somewhat bad review for someone we rented an Airbnb from recently. We marked 6 people coming and were staying for a full week. They said towels would be provided, but when we got there they only had 4 hand towels and 2 regular towels between the 6 of us. We messaged them to see if there were more somewhere, but we never heard back. We checked every closet and cabinet, and no more were found. We ended up having to buy some towels just so we wouldn't have to do laundry twice a day. Story 7. I was looking at a fantastic house in Nova Scotia where the photos showed the lounge room/kitchen with huge 2-story windows overlooking the bay. I got even more excited to see the price was reasonable. Reading further, I found out for the reasonable price you get the apartment out the back, but for a small additional fee of $200 a night you could access the part with the view. Story 8. Not enough to win necessarily, but enough to tie everyone up in court for a while. He could claim that Woodhicothat knew about this problem and was negligent, thus making him liable. Like I said, Woodhicothat would likely win as he had no idea this would happen because he had only ever rented to groups of 4, but I'm sure he wouldn't want to pay for a lawyer and whatnot. Not a lawyer, have just been sued for something like this before. Story 9. I'm not a doctor, so I have no idea how this stuff works, but calling an Uber to transfer a patient to another facility instead of using ambulance/medical transport service seems like a massive red flag to me. Did the doctor give you their name? If so, I would try reporting this incident to the hospital. At the very least, this seems highly unprofessional on the doctor's part. This all assumes this guy was actually a patient though, and that his doctor really called an Uber on his behalf. Maybe the guy was using that as a setup for some reason. Story 10. Not so much personal property as it is my experience working in event planning. There were customers who would rent our equipment and treat it as if it were their own, then there were people who out abused our stuff. The worst experience that comes to mind had to do with a caterer whom had consistently rented from us. He was hired for a wedding reception on a ship and asked us for wine glasses, plates, linens, and the like. After that weekend, we received less than half of our stuff back or it was broken. The wine glasses were thrown into the box they were delivered in, and most of those were destroyed. The same went for the plates, but we did recover most of the linens, not all. My boss told the caterer he was going to be charged for the broken glasses and plates, and he immediately assumed no fault. Well, dude, don't call us frauds when you sign a contract clearly stating that you agreed to reimburse us for damages. He tried disputing it with his credit card company, but we won out. Story 11. My boss bought the house behind mine and turned it into an Airbnb rental. Once some people rented it, and just gave it to their teenagers who threw a rager. I started hearing lots of car doors slamming and hearing kids walking right past our windows, 20 feet from the sidewalk, so cutting in our yard. It got insane fast, and apparently the cops just made all the kids leave and told my boss to throw away all the drugs and alcohol they left behind. I had to clean up a lot from my yard too. Shortly after that, someone rented it and threw a wedding in the house and basically destroyed it. They dumped pots of food everywhere, and he had to spend thousands of dollars cleaning it. They burned carpets and the whole place stank. Last I heard, he was still renting places out. Story 12. Got evicted with no late payments or any problems with landlord from rental house because he wanted to appeal to college students. Rents to 2 roomies. They set up a meth/heroin lab, I can't remember which, and sell hard drugs until they get caught by police in drug bust. The building is condemned until it can be fully restored nearly 5 or 6 years later. No one can persuade me karma doesn't exist. Story 13. A friend I was with received a call from a distraught old school buddy, lived in a rural town, who had just driven past her rental house to find the cops raiding it. So she stops her car naturally to find WTF is going on. Turns out the renters weren't even living in the house, they were growing weed in every room and knocked out bits of the ceiling and walls to feed their hydroponic system setup. Sorry, bad explanation. Basically, the house was wrecked and filled with holes, but they managed to arrest the fake tenants. The school buddy was upset and wrung her friend, who I was with, to unburden herself, as she was literally standing outside her car going, "What are they going to do next? Police." And holy shit. It was like a play-by-play description.